Well, I'm Doug Olberding, and I am from Cincinnati. Was born here, and moved away after college for about 10 years and came back in 1999. So I've been here my whole life, mostly. And yes, I am a runner. I've been a runner since, I think I count I start in 1976. That's when I joined my first track team. So I say 1976 was when I started being a runner.
Very cool. So you're from here in Cincinnati. Can you tell me when and where you were born?
Yeah, I was born actually on the west side of town in 1964. I'm the second of six, and so we were only there for about 2 years or 2.5 years or so. And then my family moved to Detroit for a short period of time. My dad worked for GM. And then they moved back to Cincinnati in late 1966. And so I grew up really in Springfield Township by Winton Woods. So Winton Woods, that park that's there, wasn't in my backyard. It was the people across the street. It was in their backyard. So that was the big playground that we had.
Very cool. Yeah, true West Sider. Where did you go to school? Can you talk about?
Yeah, I went to my grade school. I went to St. Bartholomew out in Springfield Township, right off Winton Road. Went there through the 8th grade. Then I went to Roger Bacon High School in St. Bernard, and that's where I started running cross country. I didn't know what cross country was until I got to Roger Bacon, and I figured out. I thought I was going to play basketball and baseball like everybody did, and the first day of school, this guy comes into the class and he says, "Hi, I'm Dave Feitner. I'm the cross-country coach, and boy, if you don't know what cross-country is, I'll tell you what, it's a great way to get in shape if you want to play basketball." And so I thought, that's what I heard, so I thought, well, I'll do this because I want to get in shape for basketball. And it turned out I was pretty good at running, and I got cut from basketball tryouts after the first day. So I ended up probably just saying running was the thing I was going to do. So I was at Roger Bacon. I graduated Roger Bacon in 1982, and then I went off to Indiana University. I had big dreams going to Indiana University. I thought I would be the next Olympic miler or something like that. That the team was stacked, loaded with talent. And I basically had a very unspectacular and less than ordinary career there. I was injured so much, I got frustrated. I ended up transferring in the middle of my junior year to Xavier University in Cincinnati. So I got to Xavier, and I was sitting in the cafeteria, and I saw a friend of mine that I knew that I used to run against. He goes, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I go to school here." And he goes, "Well, you should join the cross-country team," because I used to race against this guy all the time. And so I did, and so my senior year, I ran at Xavier and finished up Xavier in 1987. Had about a year off where I knew in 1987 or 1986, October of 86, you might remember there's a bit, well, you might not. There was a big sort of economic correction at the time. And it was like one of those things, it was almost like, not as bad as the pandemic, but it was like, they were like trying to find a job graduating. So I just decided I was going to go to graduate school. So I took a year off where I was going to basically try to find a program that would pay for my tuition and everything. But I was going to work. So I was bartending and I was playing in a band. So my friends and I, we had a band. We kind of toured around all the college bars and everything like that. It was a great year. I was lifeguarding, bartending, and playing in a band. Somebody once told me, you should dress for the job you want, not the one you have. So by all accounts, I should be wearing a bathing suit right now because I think the lifeguarding job was one of the best. Anyway, went to Ohio University, did my master's degree there. Worked for a spell in Columbus. I worked for the Ohio legislature. I was a staffer to the House Finance Committee. I worked under Representative Patrick Sweeney. And was there for a little bit, and then my wife and I thought, well, we were getting married. We weren't married yet, but we were engaged and ready to get married. We ended up moving to Lexington, Kentucky, where we both started. I started a doctoral degree in political science, and my wife a master's degree in public administration. So I was there we lived in Lexington for the decade of the 90s, but after about a semester, I didn't like the political science program. So I got a job as a financial analyst doing public finance work and everything like that. This is where the story gets interesting. You ready? I said that you're going to laugh, but it's not going to be funny, but it's a good story. So it's an important part of my life. Okay. So when I was down in Lexington, I started running a lot. And I had it in my mind. I always felt frustrated because what happened in college. I thought that the training was not really suited to me. It was before, Title IX had completely kicked in, so you could have 40 guys on a cross-country team. You didn't have to fund women's sports. So it was like just churn and burn, and by the end of the season, whoever was still healthy was probably in really great shape. The rest of us were like scattered, on the battlefield. Anyway, so I felt like I never really achieved what I could have done in college. So I just started training, and I decided I wanted to run the Boston Marathon. I'd never run a marathon before. So I put together a training plan and basically did this myself. I trained pretty much by myself. Had a few people that I ran with occasionally, but I followed the Jeff Galloway plan, which is a pretty rigorous plan. He's changed his tune since the 1970s. But anyway, I went up to Canada and I ran a race in Canada, the Friendly Voyager Marathon. I picked it because it was in the middle of the summer, and it was advertised as the coolest marathon you'll ever run in July. And I thought, okay, that sounds good. So my wife and I drove up in our 1976 Volkswagen camper van, and I ran the race, and I got a qualifying time. I think I came in like 10th place or something like that in my first marathon, and I ran a little bit under 3 hours, like 3 hours and 58 minutes or something like that. So not super spectacular, but a qualifier. So then I was ready to run the Boston Marathon. And so I had about a year and a half to train for that. No, less than a year. That was 93 that I did that, so I was running Boston in April of 94. And so I trained and everything like that. And it was a big deal. Some of my family decided to come up, and my in-laws who lived in the New York area, they came in, and it was a lot of fun. My sister was there. And so I ran Boston, didn't really have a particularly good race. I was probably injured when I was at the starting line, but it was Boston, and I ran a decent race, enough to have fun and enjoy everything. And after the race, my sister said, Doug, I'd like to maybe do this. She was on the first girls cross-country team at Our Lady of Angels High School. They didn't have a cross-country or track team, and one of the fathers of one of the girls that ran decided to start one, and my sister was on it. And she was 3 years younger than me. Anyway, so I said, well, sure. I'll help you. And so I wrote out, this is before internet and everything like that, I wrote out a training plan for her, and I would fax it to her. She lived in Cincinnati, I was down in Lexington. And one evening, it was a Sunday, my wife and I were going to bed. Our family had been at our cottage in Kentucky. And everybody was there. My sister left early because she was going to go do her run. And it was about 11:30 at night or 11 o'clock or something like that. The lights were out and we were in bed. And so back then we had answering machines that had tapes on them, right? And when somebody would call in, you could hear the person through the answering machine. You didn't have to pick up the phone. And it was my dad, and he's going, Doug, pick up the phone, pick up the phone, pick up the phone. And I said, you know what? I was like, and then he hung up. And then 10 seconds later, the phone rings again, and he goes, pick up the phone, Maria's hurt. And I was like, what? And I ran out and I got the phone and I go, what's going on? He says, come up to University Hospital. Maria was attacked. And I was like, what? So my wife and I, I don't think it was the weirdest thing because we didn't know, that's all we knew. But we packed clothes for a funeral. we threw suits and stuff like that in the car. We didn't know. And we drove, didn't say much driving up from Lexington, but we probably got to University Hospital, around 1 o'clock or something like that in the morning. And my family was there. A lot of my cousins were there. There was media outside. And my sister was on a run in Hyde Park. And a young kid had an argument with his parents about something, I don't know what. He grabbed a butcher knife out of the kitchen drawer and ran outside, and my sister happened to be coming down the hill, and he just stabbed her to death, and she died on the sidewalk on Pape Avenue in Hyde Park. So again, we don't have the internet or anything like that. And it completely blew up. All of a sudden, I mean, they had a grief counselor at the hospital, and she took us all into a room, and she goes, "You have to be prepared for what's going to happen, because the media is going to be at your door. They're going to be, and that's exactly what happened. It was just, it was this tragedy that was on the news for 2 weeks. I mean, it was like this whole, thing, and that was May 21st. And so we kind of got through some things. And it was probably late June that year, and we were gathered up at our cottage, and one of my sister's friends was there, and she said, "We ought to do a run in Maria's name." Like, she loved running, and she loved reggae music. She was a big reggae fan. She loved reggae music. She would go to Ripley's up in Clifton with her friends. So somebody said, "Yeah, well, we'll just call it the Reggae Run." And we're like, "Yeah, the Reggae Run." So we called a guy, Don Connolly, who I just seen his name on every race registration form that I ever signed up for, and I knew who he was. We had never met before or anything like that, but I knew him. And we said, "Hey, we want to start a race," and my family was all behind it and everything like that. So we said, "We want to do it in October," and he was like, "That's like 3 months away." He was like very discouraging, but he said he would help us, but he said, "Boy, that's not a lot of time to plan," and all the reasons why we shouldn't do it. And but we said yes. And so my dad had started this business. It was a book bindery. It's called Olberding Bindery. Everybody in my family kind of worked there except for me. I was down in Lexington. So that kind of became the hub of planning for this race and everything like that. And maybe it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the Reggae Run, Don Connolly called my dad and said, "Okay, how's things going? What are you guys planning for?" He said, "Well," my dad said, "You told us like 300 people, right?" He goes, "Oh, well, we've got 2,000 people signed up right now, and we've still got 2 weeks." So, and then my mom, who is like, her biggest fear in life is inviting people over for dinner and not having enough food for everybody. So they immediately, everybody that they knew, every person that they knew, they started calling them and saying, "We got to have food up here." They started calling restaurants, everything like that. And the whole community came out for this thing, like Frisch's. Like, they said, "Just tell us what you want. We'll bring everything up there." La Rosa's, they said, yeah, we'll bring a truck up there. Tell us where you want to park it. We'll free. And so everything, we had 5,000 people show up at this very first race. And all the food was free. The funny thing was, like, we wanted to have beer there, right? Well, if the police read this, I guess I'll get arrested. I think the statute of limitations has run out on this. But anyway, one of the owners of one of the breweries called my dad and said, "Do you have beer?" And my dad said, "No, we don't." He said, "Well, I'll bring a truck up there. If anyone asks, tell them you just paid cash for it." And so the Barrel House truck came up there loaded with kegs of beer. We have this picture from on top of Old Park Pavilion looking down of the back of the truck with these 6-foot tables around it and all these people getting beer and everything. we had a live reggae concert with the Arc Band, and so what happened there though was this thing just grew like organically. It was so organic, like we didn't know how to put on a race, right? We didn't know. None of us had ever done this before, but we all, family, friends, relatives, everybody sort of came together on this thing, and the Reggae Run became the most popular race, 5K race in Cincinnati. We all of a sudden, everybody. So to this day, when people meet me, they say, "Oh, Doug, you got to bring back the Reggae Run. You guys got it. That was the best race." Because it was just this. It was a love fest. It was a love fest. It was all the money that we raised went to charity. We didn't pay ourselves. We had no professional staff. We would raise, in the glory years of it, it would be $160,000, $170,000. We'd pay off all of our bills, and then we'd have, $100,000, $110,000, $90,000 left over. We'd keep $5,000 out to start up for the next year, and we'd donate the rest of it to the Make-A-Wish Foundation or whoever. So we'd give Make-A-Wish came to Cincinnati. We wanted to donate to Make-A-Wish. There was no chapter in Cincinnati. And we said, we want to make a $50,000 donation, but we want the money to be here in Cincinnati to benefit kids in Cincinnati. So they opened up a chapter of Make-A-Wish here in Cincinnati. And for, can't remember how many years, it wasn't all 20 years of it, but for a good chunk of that time, all the money was going to Make-A-Wish. I think it was probably 15 or 16 years, it all went to Make-A-Wish. So yeah, that's, how did yeah. So the thing is that not only the Reggae Run, changing like running here in Cincinnati, because it was a different way of, nobody did a race like that. Nobody did a race with that kind of a post-race celebration at that time. But it changed like my life, dramatically. I didn't, know it was going to, but, after my sister died, I was working for this nonprofit called the Council of State Governments. They're a public interest nonprofit. I always called it like the UN of state government. Every official that works in state government had an association. We managed all the associations. We had like a policy shop and, all this stuff. And they were reorganizing, and I was going to be head of the policy division thing. I was going to be like, I literally went into my boss, and we were going to talk about this. And I had written out a letter of resignation. And I had decided that life was too short. I'd been thinking about going back to get my doctoral degree. There was this new discipline called sport management. I loved running. I was thinking like, this is something that I think I like. I didn't know if sport management was really going to be a thing. I didn't know if I'd be able to get a job doing it because it was so new. But I decided to go back. So my wife and I resigned. That was like in June. We jumped in our Volkswagen bus, and we decided that we were going to take a lap around the country. So we left Lexington, we went up to Cleveland for a wedding, and then we went across the top all the way to the coast, down the coast, and came back. It was about 6 weeks. And by the time we got back to Lexington, it was time for classes to start. And so that was it. I did that. After about a semester, my wife said, "Doug, you're having too much fun." She decided to leave her job and go back and get, so we were both later in life graduate students. I think I was 30 when I started the program. My wife's 3, she was probably 27 when she started. And so while I was doing that, I was able to become part of the running community in Lexington. I ended up getting a job at John's running shop. That was the mecca of running, and it was the best. One of the, again, lifeguard, selling running shoes. Those were the 2 really good jobs. And I really enjoyed it. And so and John, the guy who was the owner, was a PhD social psychologist who had left academia to open this shop. So he was almost as much of an academic advisor for me as my actual academic advisor. I would even say I got better advice from John than I got from my academic advisor. And so anyway, yeah, that's kind of the thing. When I was finishing up, it was like 1998. I knew I was going to be done, and I had this opportunity. I was looking for jobs. My wife and I said, "Well, let's draw this circle around Cincinnati, and maybe we had a son that was not even a year old. We'd like to be close to family." And then all of a sudden, boom, the position at Xavier opens up. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're hiring a sport management professor. I sent the resume up there. I think I am the only person in academia, higher education, that only sent out one vita, and I got the job. I sent that one out, and I got the job. So anyway, moved up here in 1999 and started my career at Xavier.
First of all, I want to ask you, since it seems like your sister is a prevalent part of your life.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to ask you about your family makeup,
Okay.
I want to talk about. You talked about going to Roger Bacon, growing up on the West Side. You talked about where you went to school. And
Well,
when you
I was born on the West Side, but when my parents moved back from Detroit, we moved to Winton Woods, which is kind of central. You know, it's like more. It's kind of up north. I don't think it's. I don't consider
call it West Side?
I don't call that
Okay.
West Side. It is on the west side of Vine Street. So, but I don't think people up there don't consider themselves West Siders.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I want to ask you first of all, what are your parents' names?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and what
yeah.
are your siblings' names?
Yeah, sure. It's Don and Irma. My dad went to Elder High School. My mom went to Seton High School. So they were like, that's kind of what happened back then. My dad just passed away a year ago. Is today the 12th? A year ago Sunday. So he just passed away. My mom is still with us, and she's. If genetics are anything, she will be with us for a lot longer. Her mom lasted to 100 years old. My mom is 89 right now. She's in really good health. So then I said I'm the second oldest of six. It's a very compact family, right? So there was 1 year when all six of us were at St. Bart's Elementary School. So my brother is a year older than me, so he was in the 8th grade. I was in the 7th grade. My next brother was in the 6th grade. Then we skipped a year, and my sister was in the 4th grade. My other sister was in the 2nd grade, and my youngest brother was in the 1st grade. So, boom.
Nice. What are your siblings' names?
Steve, I'm Doug. Mike, Maria is my sister that passed away. Patty, and then the youngest is Bill.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks. I just want to get my bearings
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So you graduated from Roger Bacon. You said 1982.
82, yes.
That's right. And you went to Xavier.
I went to Indiana University
Oh,
first.
Indiana University first. Sorry about that.
And then I transferred to Xavier after the first semester of my junior year. And ended up on the 5-year program because of the transfer and everything. So, yeah. So I went in 82 to IU. I graduated in 87. So, yeah.
Tell me again what you studied.
Well, I think when I was at IU, I started as a telecommunications major. Then I went to accounting. I didn't like that. Then I went to political science. So I stuck with political science. When I came to Xavier, I stayed with political science and graduated with that degree. And when I went to Ohio University for a master's degree, it was a master's degree of political science.
What excites you or intrigues you about political science?
I don't know that anything really did, like in retrospect. I always tell people it's like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I loved music, but I knew I wasn't good enough to go to music school or anything like that. I'm an endless tinkerer. I don't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But when I got to political science, I was like, okay, this is okay, and I was good at it. And there were some things. I think I was probably a little bit more of an activist when I was that age. Cared about a lot of things, and I still do. But that's probably what brought me into it, I think. But it wasn't anything that I would say that I was passionate about it. I feel like to ask like an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old kid, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? I mean, they don't know. Do you know right now? I mean, I didn't know that I was going to be doing this, right? I didn't think I was going to be, that wasn't on my radar. That wasn't on my radar 2 years ago.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, life is long, right?
So it's, ugh. So I was doing political science because it was interesting. And that's, good enough reason to do something, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What instrument do you play?
I play guitar. I've been playing guitar about as long as I've been running. Yeah, about the same amount of time. And I've played in a number of bands. I've got some friends. Matter of fact, when this interview is over, my van is packed up. I'm heading out to Hyde Park, and we have our Tuesday night rehearsal and dinner there on Crier Avenue in Hyde Park. Do it every Tuesday. We play out. We try to play out once a month. So we look for wine bars and things like that. And we don't want to make it's not a career for us. It's something that we do. We enjoy each other's company, and it's I get to play guitar in front of people. Yeah. And it's fun.
What's your band's name?
Liz and the Perfectly Adequate Trio.
That's good. I love it.
Yeah, thank you. There was science behind that name.
That's
yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have a lot of interests, from running and music and things like that. When you were young, did you envision a career in any of those things? You said you didn't want to go to music school. You said you had a less than spectacular running.
Well, I knew when I was a little kid that I was fast. I knew I was fast because I played all these sports and they would make us run laps, and I would always try to be the first person done. Like everybody else hated running laps. I liked running laps. I knew if I was running laps, I would always try to be the first person back, and if we were on the playground and we were racing, I was trying to be the first person. So I did like running. I did. I remember a couple times where I would intentionally miss the bus at St. Bart's so I could run home, and I would try to beat the bus home. And I'd be wearing like my school clothes, school shoes, school shirt. I didn't have T-shirts on, or I was just running in my clothes. I try and beat the bus home. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Just found joy in it.
Yeah.
From the get-go.
Yeah.
Nice. So you're at Indiana University. You said that you transferred to Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
What year was that?
Let's see here. Let me think about this.
You rattled off a lot of things.
Yes,
you gave
I think
dates.
so. Yeah, sorry about that. So I transferred so my last semester at Indiana University would have been December of '84. So in '85, spring of '85, I was at at Xavier University, spring of '85, and it was like I came home for Christmas. That year, and I wasn't running on the team. I just was injured. I was completely frustrated with it. I'd picked up biking, but I was at home and I was talking to my mom and dad. I said, and they said, "Why don't you go down? Just go to Xavier. Just go down and talk to him." I went down and went into Father Keneally's office. He's still alive. He's got a place on Xavier's campus. I see him when I'm there, and I always say hi to him. Walked into his office, and I told him my story. I think I was in his office for about 20 minutes. When I walked out, I was a Xavier student. It was like that easy. I mean, it was like they just, okay, here's your schedule. See you in a couple weeks. And so that was it. Yeah. And then I transferred and really came to love it. It was not a place that I wanted to go when I was in high school. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to go. I thought it was big time. I was looking at places where I was going to run, and I definitely humbled. We had, Olympic class runners on our team, guys that made multiple Olympic teams, and so I thought, yeah, that's where I need to be. But no.
Were you happy to be back in Cincinnati at that time?
I think I kind of was. When I went, down to see Father Keneally, I wasn't like, this is what I want to do. It's just like I got to do something, and so. But I had, really good connections. I had friends here, the guy that I'm still in a band with today was here, and, we got a band together and started playing again and everything like that. So, I had good friends here, and so, and family and everything like that. So I wasn't like, I didn't feel like a failure or anything like that. I was a little directionless, I would say, a little directionless, probably.
It's funny that you say that because Reggie, before you he was like so set on what he wanted to do. You said, who knows at 18 or 20 what they want to do? It sounds like Reggie knew.
Yeah.
But I feel the same way you do, like kind of directionless.
Yeah, I just, and I think that there's, when I was at Xavier, I was the chair of the Department of Sports Studies. I did a little stint as an associate dean, and part of what I loved about the job was talking to students and helping them figure this stuff out. And I would always, I would get these students that would come in with their families, trying to make a college decision, sitting at the table with mom and dad and maybe a brother or sister and the kids sitting there, and the mom and dad are doing all the talking, And I would just tune into the kid and say, is this something that you're passionate about? I don't know. That's okay. So I always said, there's this fake passion. People will tell you that they're passionate about something, but I don't know if you know that when you're 18 years old. You can convince yourself of it, but most adults, the vast majority of adults, if you ask somebody in their 50s, are you doing right now what you thought you were going to be doing when you're 18 years old? 95% of them will say no. The people that say yes are the doctors, the lawyers, the accountant, the people that you had to get into that program. You had to make that decision when you're 18. You don't decide at 25 to be a doctor, right? So you have to kind of decide when you're 18 that you're going to do that, right? So those people, yes, but most people, you discover your passion in life as you learn, right? As you I always say this, we got these stupid phones in our pockets, right? I didn't know in 1987 that I would be able to reach in my pocket and have all the information known to humankind in the palm of my hand. And there it is. I didn't think that was ever going to happen. So what's going to happen in 20 years? Why should we expect people to know right now what they're going to be doing 20 years ago when the whole world could be completely different? So I always say, follow your passion, but you don't necessarily know what your passion is. So you have to explore things before you can, know what it is. Sometimes you go down a road and it's a dead end and you just forget it. It's a dead end. That was the wrong thing. You just, pick up and keep moving on. I thought I was going to I was very passionate. I loved my job at Xavier. I loved the students. I wasn't trying to leave there. I was not trying to leave there. The Flying Pig Marathon just happened because of a conversation that I was having with Iris one morning, and I didn't wake up that day thinking that I was even going to get that telephone call. So yeah.
Yeah, that's remarkable how just life can turn that way.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so after Xavier, you went to Ohio State, you said?
Ohio University.
In Athens,
oh
my gosh.
In Athens. OU in Athens, yes.
What a blunder,
yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. My wife, she'd scratch her eyes out for that,
That's honestly fair. I know people are very territorial. What year did you go to Ohio University?
I started there in August of '88, yes, because I graduated from Xavier in '87 and I took a year off. So '88, and I finished in I finished in 1990, in the spring of 1990. But I was on an internship in the State House, so I was in Columbus. So I was, that's all I had to do was finish that internship. When I finished the internship, submitted the paperwork, I graduated, I got my degree. I didn't go to the ceremony or anything like that. I was already in Columbus, so yeah.
And this is your master's?
Master's degree, right.
Yeah. So did at that point you think you would pursue a career in politics?
I thought, I don't know what I thought. I really, to be honest with you, I don't think I even knew at that time, I don't think I was formed politically. I had some leanings and things that I had, experienced in my life, but I don't think I necessarily knew. I felt like I was probably a Democrat, and the more that I was in those circles. But I will say this, that when I was in Columbus during that time, late 89 and through 90, there were all of these staffers, right, that worked in the legislature and everywhere, right? And we all got along. Like, some of the people that I hung out with and like partied with and had fun with were on the other side of the aisle. Like, and we had softball matches and we, played, hung out together. We would go to each other's fundraisers. Like, we were, hey, my representative's having a fundraiser. We just go to it because we knew there'd be free drinks and free food there and everything. I don't think that happens anymore. I don't think it happens. I think it's like,
yeah, that wedge has been really driven.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
That's interesting. I wondered too. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. You're working in Columbus at this time. You're working for staffers.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't consider like moving on to run for office yourself?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't. That wasn't anything. I just saw that life is no, it didn't have any appeal to me. I always thought I was going to be, if I was going to advance there, it would have been like in the Legislative Service Commission or something like that, doing that kind of work is where I thought I could see myself. I had no desire to run for public office, just seeing what, you're watching the sausage being made when you're up there, and it's pretty ugly. It's pretty ugly. But it was fun to do. It's, again, I didn't owe anything. I was, 22, 23 years old. I got an opportunity to do it. Sure, I'll do it for a while and see if I like it. And yeah.
Were you running at this time?
I was, yeah. When I got up to Columbus, we lived right along the Olentangy River bike path. There's like a north-south bike path. We lived in German Village, so if I ran east or west out of German Village on Thurman Avenue, I could pick up that trail and run either north or south on it. I wasn't doing a lot. I wasn't competing at all, but I was going out and running a little bit. And plus, we lived in German Village, and so it was about a 1.5 mile walk to the Rife Center, the office tower that I worked in. So I walked to work every day. It was stupid to drive. So I would walk to work every single day. I'd put running shoes in my briefcase and walk to work, get there, change. Had to wear a tie and suit all the time. Had to wear, you could take your jacket off if you were in your office. The minute you stepped out of your office, you had to have your jacket on. You had to have a tie on. So.
Yeah, different time, right?
Yeah.
And then, did you say you met your wife in college?
I met my wife. Probably the reason why I say I want to be a lifeguard is because I met my wife as a lifeguard, right? Right, that's where I met her. So at the Beach Water Park, which up there, we were like, when that first opened up, I was on staff. My running mentor at the time, Scott Miller, was the director of the aquatic staff up there. And he said, hey, we're hiring a bunch of lifeguards. He's 10 years older than me. He said, you ought to apply for this. And I said, okay. So I did, and I worked there in 1985. And then in 1986, I started working there, but I had to take summer classes. So I worked a few weeks, and I was just dedicated, taking 9 credit hours. The next year when I came back in 1987, it was the year after I graduated, recession, as I already described. And I thought, I'm going to go back and lifeguard, So what? I got an undergraduate degree. I'm going to lifeguard this summer. And so I did. And I was playing in a band, and we had this party, and I'm playing on stage, and it's all lifeguards there. We had like 120 guards on staff. They were all college age. It was great. And so I'm sitting there, and there's this girl out there dancing. And I'd never seen her before. I thought I knew everybody, And so then I didn't see her again. And then a couple days later, end of the shift, I'm looking, we're at the bottom of the Bonsai speed slide. That's where we'd have our post-shift meetings. And we decided to go to the ground round because it was like nickel wings and like pitchers of crappy beer and everything like that. So we all went there. And I'm sitting there, we got a big table, and there's that girl sitting down at the end of the table. And I asked my friend, I said, who is that? I have not seen her. She goes, oh, yeah, she goes to Ohio University. Ohio University at that time didn't get out until the middle of June. So she was just coming in for the weekends and going back. But now she was done. And so he went down and introduced us. And I don't know what our first date was, but that night, what we decided to do, I said, hey, have you ever been on the I-71 Morrow Bridge? That's that big bridge that goes over. They've redone it, right? They redid it and everything like that. Back then, what you could do was you drive up 71, there's that rest area right before it. You go park your car in the rest area, and there was a service road that you could, as long as nobody could see you, do it at night, go down the service road, and then locals had cut the fence, so you could pull the fence up, go underneath the bridge, and there was a ladder that was up there, right? And so you could lift people up to get to the ladder, and then they had to be able to get themselves up, right? And there was a catwalk that went under the entire bridge, right? And it was caged in. So you're going over, it's the highest span in Ohio, so you go on the catwalk. The last person had to be able to jump up, grab the bar, and be able to do a chin up to get to the second bar. So one person had to be able to do that, lift everybody. So then you would go out on this catwalk, and there were the big concrete bases where the thing would span like that, and the spans would come to these concrete bases. And above the concrete base was literally as wide as the highway. It was a patio. Beautiful patio overlooking the Little Miami River. So you're up there on the catwalk, and then there was a caged ladder that would go all the way down. And I said, let's go to the I-71. So that was our first thing. Like, we went there with another guy and another girl, and I still got pictures from that night. The very first night that we were ever together, I had a little camera, and there's pictures of us up on this bridge in the middle of the night, probably 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, that's that's our origin story. We're still together, and we still have crazy stuff like that happens to us.
Oh, that's what you want from love, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What's your wife's name?
Julie.
Julie.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So what year did you guys get married then?
We got married in 91. Yes, June of 91, June 1st, 1991. Yep.
And now you're in Columbus?
No, we got
at the
married, so
Bridgewater
we
Hub,
were
so
in
you're back here
Columbus.
Cincinnati.
We moved to Lexington. So we got to Lexington. I think it was in the summer of 1990. Summer of 1990. I can't remember what the month was. Yeah, summer of 1990. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then what university were you at in Lexington?
University of Kentucky.
That's what I thought, but I did not.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you actually said that.
Yep.
So you went back to school first for your doctoral program.
Well, so yeah, I rushed through some of this. We both went down there. Yeah, that's why. So we went down there. I was going to do a doctoral degree in political science. My wife was going to do her master's degree in public administration. I got into the political science program, and I was teaching. So because I taught in my master's degree program, so they gave me a class and everything like that. And I was about halfway through the semester, and I was like, no, this isn't it. I can't see doing this for 4 more years. I really couldn't. So I went to the graduate director. I said, look, I'll teach this class out and everything like that, but I'm going to do something else. And so I ended up looking in the newspaper, right, and that the Council of State Governments, that UN of state governments that I talked about, was right before we were heading up to for the holidays. I had sent a resume there. They had called me, and this guy said, it was like the 22nd of December, like at 4:30 in the afternoon. He said, hey, can you come out here for an interview? I'm like, yeah, I guess. I threw a suit on and drove out there and interviewed with this guy, and he said, okay, thanks, and left. And then, like the day after Christmas, we got back from our trip, and there was an answer on an answering machine. It was him, John Bagala, and he said, hey, we'd like you to come out. If you'd like to, if you want the job, it's yours, or whatever he said. And so then I started out there as like a policy analyst. Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't really have much time. I left the doctoral program, taught out the end of the year, went on Christmas break, came back in January, and I had this job at the Council of State Governments.
Nice. How long were you there?
Until I resigned after my sister died. So that would have been 1994. right? I think I actually resigned in June. It was probably June, or could have been July, 1994. Yeah, and that's when we went on the massive trip around the country.
Yeah. Did you say you had a son by this point too?
Our son was born in 1998. So this is, I went back to do my doctoral degree in sport management in 94, and he was born in 1998. So he was when we moved back to Cincinnati, he was a year old, right? And then our second son was born in 2001, December 2001.
And then, so you talked about after Lexington or during Lexington, you ran the Boston Marathon?
Yes, ran the Boston Marathon in 1994,
Yeah.
And that was, as I said, it was unspectacular. My dreams were squashed on the first 15 miles of that race are downhill. And I was nursing a knee issue that I probably should have just went in there and jogged it, but I convinced myself that if I could run 10 miles without knee pain, that I'd just go for it. And so I did. I just went for it. And then about 15, 16 miles, it was, excruciating. So I just kind of walked, jogged. I think I still ended up finishing like 3 hours and 30 minutes. I was trying to run about a 2 hour, 40-minute marathon is what I was shooting for. So I was, on a pretty good clip until my knee started hurting. And so then I just kind of just jogged it in. So, yeah.
That is so frustrating about injuries too. I know so many folks who've done sports, so many runners who have suffered injuries that have set them back. That sucks.
Yeah, and runners are like, you never want to admit that you're injured. You always can go through it, right? Yeah.
Well, and running I think is unique too because it's like almost all other sports have some other thing that augments them. A ball, a team, something.
Yeah.
Even swimming, you have no resistance in the water, but running is all you.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. Your sister Maria. Were you guys close growing up?
Yeah. Our whole family's close. Yeah. All brothers and sisters. We're all pretty tight, and like the big thing with Maria was like, there's like, you have your brothers and sisters and people resemble one, whatever. But my sister and I, we would go into the bathroom and we'd take our hair and pull it back. She had blonde hair, I had brown hair. And if we both like stood in the mirror and did that, we looked at ourselves and our faces looked exactly the same. So, so we were all close. And, it's like when you're young, you fight and everything like that. And then when you get a little bit older, especially when you get into college and high school and stuff like that, the difference in age, when you're 10 years old and your sister's 7, that's different. But when you're 30 years old and your sister's 27, so like I think as all of us in my family, as we all got older, we've always been close. We've always done things together, and our family's always, so we all still live in Cincinnati. I was the only one that ever really moved away from Cincinnati. So, yeah.
And you said you went to Our Lady of Angels, right?
Yeah, which is no longer there, but
right.
They merged with
John
Roger
Ford
Bacon.
Building now, right?
Yeah.
And then she was also interested in running. Were other folks in your family athletic?
Yeah, so my brother Mike, who's a year younger than me, he also ran cross country and track. And Maria ran cross country and a little bit of track. And then my youngest brother Bill ran cross country, but then switched to tennis. So, but my brother Mike and I, who, he's basically, I'm born in January, and he was born in April. So we're, my mom had like a 4-month break or something like that before it was time to go again. So Mike and I think he started running because I was doing it, so his freshman year, he joined the cross country team. And so when we got, like my senior year, this is the thing, my senior year in track, I ran the mile, the 800, I'd run anything they would tell me to run. I'd run the 2 mile, whatever. And my brother Mike ran the 800 too. And there were several races, right, where we came in first and second. Yeah, so like the first time it happened was the Coleraine like Invitational, whatever it was called. It was a nighttime meet, and I ran, and I had my strategy. I always did kind of the same strategy, and coming off the last curve onto the straightaway, and I could hear footsteps. I'm like, oh shit, who the hell's that? And I just, I was just bearing down and everything like that. And I crossed the line first, and as soon as I looked over, it was my brother Mike. He was like this far behind me. So we did that a couple of times. He didn't beat me. I think his senior year, he might have beat my fastest 800, but yeah. So yeah, we did all that stuff.
Yeah. That's cool that you all have that shared love of running too.
Yeah.
Did you and your sister and your brother run together ever?
Well, there was a really cool thing. I mentioned a while back, I said my running mentor, who was like the guy that hired us at the beach water park, okay? So his name was Scott Miller, okay? And Scott Miller, he was 10 years older than me, and I first met him because he worked at the Pal Crosley YMCA, which is on Winton Road, not even a mile and a half from where I lived. And that was where we kind of hung out and stuff like that. And one time I walked into the YMCA and I had my Roger Bacon jacket on and the cross-country insignia there, and I think I had pinned a medal that I had won on it or something like that. And he saw me walking through with this medal. He just stood and goes, yes! He goes, hey, Jay, saluted me or something like in a really goofy voice. And I was like, who's this guy? And he said, do you run? He said, you got to cross. I said, yeah. He goes, well, if you want to run, we have a group that runs up here. You should come up. And so I went up there on a Saturday, and it was just him and this other guy. His name was Mike Malone, and me. And these guys are like 10 years older than me. They're skinny and everything like that. And they said, well, you want to go run with us? I said, yeah. Like, where are we going to go? And I got in with these guys, and we ran like a 10-mile run. I think I'd probably run like a 10-mile long run, maybe twice in my life at that point. But it was right after the track season, so I was in good shape. And I hung with these guys, the whole time. They came back, and they said, well, you can run with us anytime. So anyway, what happened was he started like it was very informal. It was like come up to the YMCA at 3:15 on Tuesday or Thursday, and he'll take everybody running. So all these high school kids, from like Roger Bacon, Finneytown, Green Hills High School, Wyoming, whoever, they just met up there. There might be 20 of us or sometimes 30, and we just go running through Winton Woods, and Scott would lead us around and everything like that. And so that was like a really cool, my first like experience of like running as a social, as sort of, that was a social thing, right? But what I didn't know was I was having so much fun doing it. And I was running with Scott, who was like a really good runner, and some other people that were really good runners. I didn't know how good a shape I was getting in. And so it was February, and this is, like I said, I wanted to go to IU. And IU hosted these all-comer indoor track meets that you could just go up to. And college people would run it, and everybody would run it. And I thought, I'm going to go up there and run in this race, and hopefully the coach sees me or something like that. So I went up there. My brother drove up with me, my older brother who didn't run, but we drove up together. And I went in, signed up, and everything like that. And there was another coach there that had recruited me that wanted me to go to Bellarmine College in Louisville. And he was a nice guy, and I'd gotten to know him. And so he goes, what are you doing here? So I'm going to run in the mile. And he said, okay. So I get in. I don't even, I don't remember what place I came in. I didn't win it, but there was college kids in it. I probably came in like 4th or 5th or something like that. But when I finished the race, indoor mile, I went back over, and he said, I got your splits. I said, oh, really? And he showed it to me, and it was like a 4:24, which the school record at Roger Bacon was 4:28. So that was the first race in February. We haven't even had a competitive season. And he called my coach and said, and I think he mailed a letter with the splits and everything like that, that I'd broken the school record on just going up to an all-comers meet, running indoors and everything like that. So that was like, my senior year was just, and that was, running with Scott Miller and all those guys. Like I was having so much fun. I had no idea how good a shape I was getting in. Yeah.
That's cool. That's fun to do.
Yeah.
I think some people train super intentionally, but yeah.
Yeah, it was like very accidental. Yeah.
Very nice. My original question there was if you ran with your brother or sister.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah,
run with them?
we did. I'm sorry.
No,
They
it's okay.
joined us up there,
It's
so that was I got way off on a tangent.
I'm not
but,
critiquing your
But
interview.
that group that came up there, right? Yes, my sister did, and my brother did. And what was really funny was like, we started doing that like right after the cross country season in the fall, and like, there was this girl that I started dating, and then her brother, my sister, started dating her brother, and my brother started dating the other girl over there. So like we were like boyfriends and girlfriends, and so we would like go up there and run together. And then on I think it was Thursday night, always on Thursday night, that group would go up to the Ponderosa Steakhouse, that chain. I don't think they were even in business anymore, but we would all go up there and get dinner together and sit there and like eat. Like just keep filling up our plates from the salad bar and all that stuff. Get the cheapest thing, but anyway. So we all did that. There was a really cool. There was a race here in Cincinnati. It was the Valentine's Day race. It was a 2.5-mile race, and the way it was done was you entered as a couple, and the combined time from the man and woman was the time. That, so it wasn't an individual race. It was a couples race. And so we went down there and did it, and whatever year that was, it was probably February of 1982. And my girlfriend and I won. I think Mike and Shelley might have got second, and Maria and Art might have got third. Like we came back to my parents' house, and we all had these shirts on, and we had these laurel wreaths and these boxes of heart candy, and my mom took a picture of all of us. So I know we won it, but I think that they placed as well because they've got the candy boxes and everything in the picture. But yeah.
Oh, that's a fun memory.
Yeah.
And a fun idea too, a couples race.
Yeah.
Nice, very nice. So you're living in Lexington at the time when you hear about your sister being attacked. What do you remember what year this was?
Yes, it was 1994.
94?
Yep, 1994.
Yeah. So what was your sister doing at that time? She was still here in Cincinnati?
No, she was here in Cincinnati. She was like a marketing, like director of marketing for the beach water park. So she worked up there as a lifeguard. My brother worked up there as a lifeguard. We all worked there and everything like that. And when she graduated, they hired her to basically go out and do sales, like do group sales and stuff like that. So yeah, she was working at the beach water park at the time. Yeah.
Okay. And how old was she when she passed away?
27.
27.
Yeah.
God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So traumatic.
Yeah.
What was the result of that case? Was that person ever prosecuted?
Yeah. They caught him right away. He didn't even try to get away. A guy was in a car. He saw it. He said, I can't remember his name, Sean. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. But he saw it. He thought they were fighting, and he pulled over and he said, "Stop!" And the kid just stood up and dropped the knife and then just sat down on the sidewalk.
Oh my God.
And they called the police and they got him.
And this was a young person, you said?
He was 16 years old.
Oh my God.
Yeah, 16 years old. And he came from a family of 10. I think he was the youngest of 10. That's a hard thing to talk about. That is a really hard thing to talk about because, it was not a. My parents have sort of incredible strength and faith, and my dad would always say, "Well, the Lord never gives us anything we can't handle." So there was always that kind of attitude behind it, but it was really hard. The trial, I was in Lexington, so I couldn't really go to the trial and everything like that. But he ended up, he was going to be tried as an adult, but then they got him to bust it down to a minor or something like that. And I think it was 25 to life or something like that. And he was paroled last year. Yeah. He was paroled in 2023. Yeah, 2023 he was paroled. And, we all went up to the parole hearing and everything like that. But, yeah, so he is, I don't know where he's living. He's not to have any contact with us. His family can't contact us or anything like that. But I think he's not living in Cincinnati. I think he's living in Kentucky somewhere. But I don't want to know. You know, I don't want to see him.
Yeah, no pressure to talk on this any more than you want to. But no, I'm so sorry. I gotta express again my sorrow for that. That is so hard.
Yeah.
So this is 1994, and then you said too, you came up to try to see her in the hospital after that happened. How long between the time that she passed away and then the Reggae Run?
She died in May, and in October, the Reggae Run.
Okay, yeah, and I wondered if that was the same year, because you said that the
1994 was the first one, yes.
So you kind of talked about the origin story of the Reggae Run too, and it kind of being in her name.
Yeah.
And then you donated to Make-A-Wish, like in her name also.
Yeah, I think the first year we gave to the Council on Child Abuse, first couple years, and then somebody who was working at the Council on Child Abuse went to Make-A-Wish, and we decided to take the money there because he was, really instrumental in helping us, we were partners with Make-A-Wish, and he was really, so we decided to move it there, and so yes.
Yeah. How did organizing that race make you feel? I mean, nothing obviously corrects such a horrible situation.
No, I will tell you this, it was the biggest buzz in the world. I mean, the thing that was the coolest thing, so I ran every single Reggae Run, right? I was there, I had like a belt on with radios and da-da-da-da-da, and we're running around getting everything organized, and I had a friend of mine, and about 15 minutes before the start of the race, I'd take my belt off, give it to my friend, we'd go down to the starting line, and I would get in the front, and we had somebody making some announcements, but we didn't do the Star Spangled Banner. My mom insisted that we sing the Ave Maria, which is a Catholic hymn, right? And so we brought in this woman who was, do you remember, what was that show? Not Star Search, but it was one of those kind of shows. And she had been a contestant on there, and she lived in Cincinnati, and somebody knew her. So she would come up, and we'd give her a microphone, and she would sing this beautiful rendition of the Ave Maria, and then we would start the race. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful, yeah. How many years did the Reggae Run
20.
last? 20.
Exactly 20.
That's amazing.
Exactly 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell me why it sort of ended or folded?
Well, so I think we were a victim of our own success. We were, but I think also it was good that we weren't race directors, but in the end, probably that's why. My dad had a business. My dad was very much about, he was in control of everything. He was, kind of never really an athlete or anything like that, but, it was all their friends and networks and everything like that. Like if you ask me, I know, so what happened was we got so big, right, that if you go up to Alt Park, the overlook up there, right, where are you going to park for 5,000 people? Okay, so, and that venue is not really built for, so we were shoehorning this thing into there. And, so what would happen is the course, went out Principio and then down to Delta and then came up Delta and turned on Observatory and came back into the park. So we were landlocking Mount Lookout. If you lived in there, you're going to leave. So we would go and, go to all the houses and put flyers on the doors and say, some people were like, thank you for letting us know. They knew we were doing it. But there were some people that were like, they didn't want any events like that happening there. So we were getting pressure from the police to, look for another location. And so we finally, for the 19th one, that's when they told us we needed to move. And I said, well, if you're telling us to move for the 19th anniversary, then we're not going to be able to do it. There's no way we can put it together and move it somewhere else. So we'd be done. And they said, well, you can have one more year in Alt Park, then you have to move. And we said, okay. So we did last year in Alt Park in 2013. Then in 2014, we moved it to Eden Park. And it just didn't work. It was not the same venue. It was not the same vibe. I tell this story. I've told it to a bunch of people. But for 19 years, on that first weekend in August, never a drop of rain on Reggae Run Day. Never a drop of rain. There's times there were hurricanes. We're like, oh my God, and it's raining on Thursday, Friday, no rain. Saturday, no rain. Anyway, so that year that we moved it to Eden Park, race goes off right as the first couple finishers come through. It starts to rain a little bit, on, off, and then boom, it just starts coming down. And volunteers are abandoning their posts. The food booths are da-da-da. Then lightning came in. We had to stop the concert. The concert was in the Season Good Pavilion there. It was a great place for a reggae concert. People were digging it, but I had to go up on stage and say, we have to, get to your, it's like lightning. We had to stop everything. And people were, drunk and whatever, and nobody was, really happy that we were stopping it. They're like, oh, we can stay. We don't mind dancing in the rain. It was warm rain. And I walked back down behind the pavilion, and we had hung up this big banner. I don't know how big it was, 20 by something, really big. And it was a picture of my sister when she was with her friends in Jamaica. And we, it was like, and she's just kind of looking like this, and she's got this smile on her face. And I'm walking up there and I see Maria, it's pouring down rain and she's smiling. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is, to redo the event. And none of us are getting, we all have jobs. Everyone's got a job, everyone's got a family, and it's a big lift to put this thing on. It was a really big lift. And I don't think everyone in my family was ready for that. But I kind of, I said, look, I think we should vote. We can make it just put a yes or a no in there. You don't have to put your name on it and everything like that. And the cancelings, saying yes to the end of it outdid the no's. But my mom and dad would still, they just reminisced about it so hard. Their friends loved it. All these people just loved it. And today I'll be at the flying at FC Cincinnati. We had our race just last weekend, and somebody will come up to me and say, man, you got to bring back the Reggae Run. The Reggae Run was the best thing. Anyway, I always say now, we could never do that race the way we did it then, and I'd rather let people live with the happy memories that they had of that event.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes true. It's like a thing, runs its course. And it's interesting that you felt that finality when you're looking at her picture. And
and I was getting, I had two kids, right, that had things that they had to do,
sure.
right? So it was, I think at that time my oldest was in high school. Mm-hmm. He was running cross country at the time. Yeah. He was a sophomore in high school. Yeah.
Where did Maria's love for reggae come from?
She just liked it. I think there was a bar in Clifton called Ripley's, and they had, I think Thursday was reggae night, and this band called the Arc Band would be up there, and they kind of had home base in Columbus, but they were from the islands. They were authentic reggae, and they would do the sort of Ohio college circuit, and Ripley's was their stop. And so we're still friends with them, so we're still friends with the Arc Band. If they're in town playing at Stanley's or something like that, we, some of my brothers and sisters and friends will go out and see them. So, matter of fact, when my youngest sister got married, they were the wedding band. We had a reggae band.
Cute. That's funny.
Yeah. So anyway, they're good guys. Yeah.
That's nice. It's nice that you turned that tragedy into something that grew and is remembered and is part of history. And
Yeah.
So you said after that initial year in '94, you and your wife went on that big trip cross country,
mm-hmm.
and then you came back to Xavier.
No, I came back to UK.
UK,
yeah. So I came back and I started my doctoral degree at UK.
Oh, right, in sport management, yes. And then when did you get the job at Xavier?
I was officially hired in 1999. So I started fall semester of 1999 was my first semester.
Nice. And you both moved back to Cincinnati?
Yeah, I moved back to Cincinnati, yes, yep.
What part of town?
Well, it was so hard to find a house that time. It was like the crazy real estate market, and it was like we'd see a house for sale, and then it was sold. And our real estate agent called us and said, the house next door to me is going up for sale. You guys should come up and look at it, because once they stick the sign in the ground, it's sold. So we went up there, and it was in Hyde Park, And we didn't love it, but we were getting desperate. So we said yes, and so we bought it. And it was okay. You know, it wasn't us. Like, we're like old house people, you know. This was like a ranch. And so we moved in. I think we were settled in there in July, and I was at work, and I get a call from my wife. She goes, "Hey, Doug, what are you doing after work?" And I said, "I don't know what." And she goes, "Well, I found a house." I said, "Wait, we got a house. What are you talking about? We found a house." She goes, "No, this one's really cool. It's in Pleasant Ridge." And da-da-da-da-da. And I said, "Okay." I was prepared to hate it. And we went over, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I like this," you know? And, you know, our street in Hyde Park was a hill. So, you know, there's no place to learn to ride a bike or anything like that. And so we sold our house. We lived in it for like July until like maybe April. We sold it, and we bought our house in Pleasant Ridge, where we live right now. So we've been in Pleasant Ridge since 2000.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, really quick, what are your two sons' names?
The oldest one is Noah, and the youngest is Max. Noah lives in Chicago, and Max is in Boulder, Colorado.
Cool. Very nice. Okay, so this is where we left off at the beginning when I interrupted you.
Okay, very good.
Now will you tell me how you got involved with the Flying Pig and how the Reggae Run kind of was
Yeah. So really how it started was I landed at Xavier, and if you are a professor, to keep your job, you have to publish, right? You have to publish articles in peer-reviewed journals, or you have to publish academic books. There's a few things that you can do, but you can't just like, you know, write an article for a magazine or anything like that. So I was looking for opportunities to publish, and I had this idea about doing an economic impact study of the Flying Pig Marathon, because I had, you know, done some reading there. I wasn't an economist, but I liked economics, and it was a subject that I liked in graduate school. So I reached out to somebody that I didn't know. I had just met him. He was hired the same year I was, and I said, "Hey, you're an economist. You want to write an economic impact study with me?" And he said, "No, but that guy over there would probably do it." And so I went over, and it was Steve Cobb, who had been at Xavier since I don't know when. I think he was hired in like 1980 or something like that. He did his PhD at Brown University, and he was an economist and everything like that. And I went and talked to him, and he said, yeah, because, you know, he had this idea. He had been thinking about this idea of import substitution. It's a weird economic theory, but briefly, if you live on an island and the island doesn't manufacture cars, then you have to import a car if you want a car, right? If you live in a city that doesn't have a marathon, then you have to import a marathon. You import it by leaving, right? You have to import a marathon to do it, right? So you end up leaving the city, right? Just like if you needed a car on an island, you take your money and you give it to another country, right? So what we thought was the marathon was a test case for this theory in international trade called import substitution. We were taking international trade theory and we were applying it to a marathon. And we thought this is perfect because people will dedicate, 6 to 8 months of their life to prepare for a marathon. They're probably only going to do one marathon a year. Maybe some other people do more. So we did the regular economic impact study of the marathon, which is focused on out-of-town visitors, people that bring their money to Cincinnati because of the marathon and they spend it here. But the twist on it was, how many people in the city of Cincinnati or in this metropolitan statistical area are staying here because of the Flying Pig Marathon instead of leaving to go somewhere else? So we had a series of questions in the survey where we would say, if it was not for the Flying Pig Marathon, would you have run a marathon in another city? And if they said no, then we don't count them. But if they said yes, I was going to do Chicago, I was going to do Columbus, I was going to do whatever, then that is it's basically money that the marathon that would have left the economy, right, is money that was going to flee the economy, but it stays here. And the marathon was a perfect test case for it. It really was a perfect test case for it. And because at that time, just getting a regular economic impact study published was impossible. Like, they've been done to death, and nobody was publishing economic impact studies. But we did an article and an abstract about this import substitution thing. And the Journal of Sport Economics said yes, and so we went through the whole thing. We got it published. And so that whole economic impact thing of the marathon, that's the one of the articles that we wrote that really got sort of published traction in other articles. It was cited a bunch of times. Then the other one that we did was also on the marathon. It was another economic theory that we were like, oh, maybe the marathon is a test case for this. It's called the Allen theorem. It's the theory of shipping the good apples out. And it goes like this, right? If you are in Washington and you grow apples, right? Your best apples will command a higher price the further away from the market where they are sold, right? So if you're like in Maine and you're catching lobster, if you get a really good lobster, you're going to sell that one because everybody can eat lobster in Maine and they get whatever they want. But a really good lobster will get a better price in New York City than it will get in Maine. So in sport tourism, that interpretation of that is that, for example, if you're a golfer, if you golf in Cincinnati, how much are you going to spend on a round of golf? I don't know. But if you go on vacation, right, with your friends, how much are you going to spend on golf, right? You spend a lot more, right, because there's sunk costs in the trip. So we had this thing that we thought, I bet the longer that people travel to Cincinnati, the more they will spend on housing, hotels, everything like that. And so we use zip code data and everything like that, and we're able to basically prove the sport tourism interpretation of the Allen theorem using the Flying Pig Marathon as the test case. So, nerd alert. Freaking nerd alert.
Wow, way to make running cool.
Yeah, I just killed it, man. I made it boring as shit.
No, that's so exciting. So were you affiliated with the marathon at that time that you were doing those studies?
Well, when I approached them the first time, when we had the Reggae Run, I think it was in 1998, the Reggae Run was blown up. It was big. And the organizers at the time, Mike Boylan and probably Rich Williams, and I don't know if Bob Coughlin was there, but they reached out and said, hey, can we put up a booth for this? We're doing this marathon in Cincinnati. Can we do something at the Reggae Run? And we said, yes. So when they came and started talking about it, they said they were going to need volunteers, to run water stops and everything like that. So the Maria Olberding Foundation, we'd call it the Maria Olberding Foundation, we did the very first marathon. We were the water stop at Hyde Park Square. So we did that for a number of years. And so that was my association, was as a volunteer. When I got to Xavier, I reached out about an economic impact study, and they said yes. And while I was working on the economic impact study, they invited me to join the board. So I joined the board in 2002. Yeah.
Have you been on the board since?
Well, I was on the board until 2023 when I resigned as I was applying for this job that I got now. So when I stepped down from the board, I'd been board chair twice, treasurer, all that bunch of stuff. But when this happenstance call with Iris that led to me applying, I stepped down in December, like right after. I think I stepped down during our September board meeting. That I announced my candidacy. I said I was going to do it. I wasn't like a candidate or anything like that, but I wanted to throw my hat in the ring. So I left the room. I said, I don't think I should be in the room while you guys talk about this. So I left, and so that was my last board meeting as a board member. And then on June 9th of last year was my first board meeting as the CEO and president. So.
Very cool. Yeah, while you were on the board at that time, like, do you have any stories from your leadership then?
Yeah, lots of stuff.
So you're working at Xavier, you're on the board
Yeah,
of the
working
Flying
at Xavier
Pig.
and on the board of the Pig, right? And so I had this I was the internship coordinator for our undergraduate program, and so I would feed interns to the Flying Pig, and I got the Flying Pig very early on. I said, find money in your budget to pay the interns. Everybody's doing these internships for free. If you can find some money to pay these interns. So they were one of the first, back in the early 2000s, nobody paid interns. Like, you just work for nothing. And so they put together like a budget. I think they got like $300 a month or something like that, which for a college student is pretty good. So we started getting these really top quality interns, and several of my students who were interns have, gone on and been employed by the Pig and then moved on to other things. I'm thinking about some of the funny stories. There's funny stories and there's really serious stories too. But I think of, let me think about it. So I thought one of the craziest ones was at one point in time I had helped organize the relays, right? How the relays were going to be run. And so what I ended up doing, I had one of those like Vespa scooters, right? So I could get around the course and everything pretty easily. So I would start my day over on Eggleston as all of the relay buses were queuing up, and then people would get on their bus that was heading to their zone and go out. So I was there to make sure all the buses were there and people were getting on the right bus and everything like that. And once the buses were gone, then I would ride to the zones to make sure everything, so I'd be ahead of the race and everything like that. One year I was there and we had radios at the time. Not everybody was on cell phones, so we had these radios, and I get this radio call, and they say, the start of the race is going to be delayed. And what was really weird is, like, while I was sitting there getting the buses ready, these fire trucks with their sirens blaring are coming down Eggleston and turning on to River Road and heading east on River Road, which that's our course. That's coming in. They finish, that's like 22, 23, 24, 5 miles. And so what we found out was there was a structure fire on Eastern Avenue, and it was a big one, and it was burning. And so one of our police officers, Scott Krauser, just like, brilliant. I mean, he grabbed a bunch of cones, threw them in his cruiser, and shot out there, got on the east side of where the fire was, and he coned it off, and there was a running path, right, that paralleled Eastern Avenue, between the river and Eastern Avenue. And so he said, look, I can divert people onto this path, they'll be okay, we can bring them back on here. So we just decided on the fly, the course has changed, right? And so we were able to start the race like maybe only 10 minutes late or something like that. And so everybody was doing that, which meant that they were going to be running more than 26.2 miles. So we had to, it was really interesting. So we pulled it off and everything like that. And then people that are trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon, now their time is going to be for 26.4 miles instead of 26.2. But we reached out to the Boston Marathon organization, and they basically allowed anybody that had a qualifying time, that was within a certain rate. They figured out something, and they said, yep, if you got this, you're in. So that was like one of those think on your feet, crazy, times.
That is crazy when you have an event that big and that many people. And
yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
Well, you're going through like 5 cities, 2 state departments of transportation, police, fire, safety officials in every one of those cities, neighbors, businesses. The easiest thing to do would be to run it out, turn around, and come back. That'd be the easiest thing to do, but that'd be a really boring course and nobody'd like it. So if you want a good course and something that's interesting, you gotta work for it. Yeah.
Very cool. Oh, that's awesome. We're kind of moving through our list of questions here, but tell me just about, you work at a place called Iris now? Can you explain this to me?
No, Iris Simpson Bush.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned that, and I was like,
I'm
is that
sorry,
a name or a company?
No,
Sorry.
so Iris Simpson Bush is she was a founding board member. I think she worked for Channel 9, so she was on the board. And then when we were making a change at the executive director level, she did like I did, resigned from the board and threw her hat in to be executive director, and she was selected as executive director. I think she started literally, I started at some point in 2002, and she started right after me. I knew her from some conversations, but I joined the board about the same time she became the executive director of the Flying Pig. And so she was executive director, then they changed the position to CEO through 2023. Actually 24. So she stepped down at the beginning of June, and we had a little passing of the torch ceremony and everything like that. So when I was talking to Iris, it was before the 2023 marathon, and Iris is the type of person that you'll get a text from her. It could be at any time. He'll say, "Do you have time to talk?" So this is a Saturday morning at 7 o'clock. Got the text. Sure. Went down in the basement. It was probably early April, so right before the marathon, and the pandemic had disrupted a lot of things. In the running industry, if you can't gather people together, if you can't hold events, then you can't make any money. So the pig really buckled down. We survived the pandemic. We didn't have to lay anybody off or anything like that. But the other thing that it did was it disrupted our succession plan. We had a succession plan. Iris had been wanting to step away, but she stayed on through the pandemic to keep everything going and everything like that. Took a cut in salary and did all those things. And then, so this is coming out. She's like, "Doug, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't want to do a national search. I just don't think we're going to find the right person that, has the passion for the pig and da-da-da-da-da." And she's just talking to me. And we had been talking about a bunch of stuff before that. So this is an hour-long conversation, and this is at the end of the hour-long conversation. And then I think I just said, "Well, I don't know. I think maybe if you think I could do it, maybe I'd like to try it." That's about the way I said it. Not with a lot of conviction, because I hadn't thought about it until literally that moment. So that was, and then she was like, "Oh, you would be great." Then we just started talking, and I went upstairs and told Julie, I don't know what I just said down there, but, and I hadn't thought about this. I had final exams to give in 2 weeks. I was not thinking, and so that started the ball rolling, and I think I interviewed at some point in September, and then another one in October, and then it was right after Thanksgiving is when they offered the position. So yeah, in 2023. Yeah.
Very cool. And do you have future plans, goals? How long you think you'll keep that? You're just gonna?
Well, we are doing a lot of stuff right now. So I always say that this would be a really different job if everything was broken when I got there. But really it wasn't broken. There's a few things that needed some changes and some tweaking and stuff like that. But the team is really good people. Iris did a great job of building the organization. So the big things that are on our plate right now is, so when I accepted the position, that spring semester of 2024, I was shadowing Iris and teaching my classes and everything like that, kind of trying to be a little bit in both worlds, so I knew what was coming down. And our biggest issue was the place where we had been for 27 years was not renewing leases, so we knew we were going to have to move. And we thought at some point that they would let us go month to month, but then right before I took the job, it was confirmed that we had to be out of there by November. So the first thing on my plate was, we got to find a place to live. We got to move this thing. And so I started, looking around and everything like that. At the same time, we were looking at potentially buying some space, right? But we knew we couldn't close or do anything like that, so I had to find temporary space. So lo and behold, not the first place, probably the third place that I looked at was Xavier University. I called up the facilities vice president, whom I had known. We'd worked on projects together at Xavier. I'd probably known him for a good 15 years. And I said, "Bob," told him the situation, "McGrath Hall is not being used, and it's got loading docks. Do you think we could use it?" He goes, "Oh, Doug, I'd love to give that to you, but we're building a medical college, and the architect and the construction company is going to set up shop there. But come over here. I want to show you this space. And we are in the original Coca-Cola bottling plant in Cincinnati. It's a beautiful building. It's Art Deco. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. We've got this wonderful space in there, 5,000 square feet total, 2,500 of office, 2,500 of storage. It's not a permanent solution for us, but it's a great place to go. We can use all of the conferencing facilities and everything like that, and it's a great place for people to come and see us. So yeah, we love that. But then the other thing is on June 10th of this year, we closed on our building that we're going to renovate in Walnut Hills. So the plan there is we want to have a space that's more than just a place for us to keep our stuff and to go to work. We want to use this to activate the Walnut Hills community. We want to be the center of the running ecosystem here in Cincinnati. Bob Ronker was here just a little bit ago. Anybody that's been in Cincinnati remembers the Bob Ronker's running spot and what it looked like on a Tuesday or Thursday evening with hundreds of runners getting ready to leave on their training runs from the shop there. We want to try to build that vibe. Yeah.
Really quickly, where was the old location?
The old location was 644 Lynn Street. So it's the Gateway Office Tower West or something like that. If you drive by it now, the first floor is all boarded up. It's like an 11 or 12-story building. I think they're going to tear it down and redevelop the whole site. I saw that they had applied for a utility disconnect, so there's no utilities in the building. I think they're going to just blow it up.
Gotcha. And then where's this new building in Walnut Hills?
It is 729 East McMillan. So if you go up Gilbert Avenue,
I know right where that is.
yeah, so there's that PNC Bank that's on the corner, and the street on the other side of the PNC Bank is Melrose. So we're really on the corner of Melrose and East McMillan. So it basically was originally designed as a grocery store. UC bought it sometime like 77, and they built on the front of it and then put in 5 loading docks. So there's dock high loading, which we love. I always tell people, picture an Aldi's grocery store empty. That's about what it is. It's about 18,000 square feet. And the ceilings are probably 25 feet high. Nothing inside of it. Just a big empty box. Yeah. So a lot of stuff we can do with it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, flexible space.
Meeting with the architects for our first programming meeting on Friday.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so many big things ahead. Cool. Well, we have talked about quite a bit. Is that, to me, that's kind of like the end since it's right now. But is there more you'd like to expand on, like with the pig or with your running career?
Well, I think the other thing about the flying pig is, the pandemic used to be you could go on Don Connolly's calendar before the pandemic, and there was a race every single weekend in Cincinnati, probably more than one, right? Especially in the spring and the fall. Friday and Saturday might be, or Saturday and Sunday might be 3 events, on Saturday, 3 events on Sunday. Pandemic wiped out a lot of smaller events. They haven't come back. It also challenged a lot. I think Iris and the team did a really good job of keeping the pig strong, and we were able to survive through and come out of it. We had to spend down our reserves and everything like that, but we are back. We're healthy now. But a lot of organizations are not healthy, right? And a lot of these events went away, and they're not coming back. So one of what this will be announced this week, so we can talk about it, or next week. We are partnering with FC Cincinnati to take over operations of the Thanksgiving Day race here in Cincinnati. So the Thanksgiving Day race is the 6th oldest race in the United States. For a long time, for most of its history, it was the only race that you could do in Cincinnati. It was the only race. There were not road races in the 1950s except for the Thanksgiving Day race. So it's got this huge legacy, and there is an inflection point right now with that event. And so matter of fact, the agreement, we haven't officially, we came to the verbal agreement. I took the verbal agreement, I gave it to our attorneys, and the attorneys are buttoning up, but it's so I think we'll have it signed by the end of this week. I don't anticipate anything. So that's another thing. And then the other thing that we're doing, and this one is, I always say, sometimes we have to build the pig while we're flying it. This is a build the pig while we're flying it moment. We are in discussions right now with Blink, and this goes back to January of last year. I had been doing I taught sport marketing, so I'm always, that's where my mind is most of the time. And when you think about marketing, you're designing products and services to meet the needs, wants, and desires of your target consumers, right? And target consumers can change over time. And so one of the things that I had been reading that really was, grabbing my attention was Gen Z, right? So Gen Z is behaving very differently than me, right? My generation, millennials, Gen X, and especially their attitudes around running and fitness and everything like that. For example, you've probably heard this, Gen Z doesn't drink like my generation drank. If you know anybody that owns a brewery, they're really worried about this. They're not drinking beer, right? And we have all these events that are themed around beer. We have a beer series, 3 events, that culminate in a party with beer. And I started thinking oh. And so we have a great partnership with Burke. This is like a 93-year-old company that is I always just say, my joke is their kung fu is really good. They do our runner satisfaction surveys and everything like that. And I reached out and I said, hey, we got this Gen Z problem. And they said, oh, coincidentally, we have got a new, for lack of a better word, it's like an idea, concept to market development process, where you have an idea here and it's an accelerated process to get it to market. It's a combination of using real focus group research, but it's sort of interwoven with some AI. And so they said, they're just developing this process. They said, you guys can be our guinea pigs. We said, yes. So starting on right at the end of March, right, as we were getting super busy, we started it. I grabbed all the Gen Zers from our team. I kept all the olds off of the thing. Only the Gen Zers were in. I got to go, and our director of operations got to go. But they walked us through this process. We had to slow down around the Flying Pig Marathon, but then about 2 weeks ago, I could see, we could see what was coming. We could see it forming. These, we started with these 55 idea nuggets, and you could kind of see how the thing was coming together. And, back in the beginning of June, I could see that one of the ideas that was really gathering was a nighttime run. So it ended up being like the title that they landed on, which is just a whole placeholder title, was a night shift, but it was like a DJ-fueled, glow-in-the-dark run with interactive blah, 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 blah. We learned all this stuff that Gen Z doesn't care how long, it doesn't have to be a 5K. It can be 2.6 miles. It can be whatever distance. It's the experience. It's building community. And so we had a campaign meeting, and I sat down next to Josh Hooser, who is the founder, president of Agar, who puts on Blink. And I said, Josh, I got this idea. And he said, send me a one-pager. So I sent him a one-pager, did a really cool one-pager, colored and everything like that. And they were having their retreat, the Blink planning retreat. So it was just, luck favors the prepared, right? We had this idea all teed up. I gave it to Josh. They took it to the retreat. Yesterday, I met with the chamber, and we're going to try to execute this race for 2026. And that was the whole thing of this. The idea when we started this thing was we want to design an event that appeals to Gen Z, that has repeat purchase power, that's sponsorable, and on the scale of the Queen Bee, so like 5,000 people, right? And we want to do it in 2026. So we got the concept baked up in about 7 weeks. And it was just, the timing was perfect. We got it baked, and they were having their planning retreat, and I happened to talk to Josh that day. And so this is a build the pig while we're flying it. We're going to we got a year out, there'll be some challenges, I'm sure. But that's the next thing that's coming. So by the time people see this, maybe it'll happen, or maybe it crashed and burned on the rocks. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
Seems highly unlikely.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool that so many things are happening.
Yeah. It is. It keeps me busy. Yeah. In 2019, right? I was coming back from vacation with kids, and my wife Julie had to fly ahead because she had to go to a conference. So it was just me and the kids, and driving down the road, and I got this terrible headache. And I'd been getting these headaches. So I went back and I went to the doctor and said, hey, I got these headaches. And he said, well, let's get an MRI, or not an MRI, a CAT scan, right? And I said, okay. So I went and I got a CAT scan. And it was like a Wednesday morning. And then like Wednesday night at 7:30, my doctor called. My doctor never calls me at 7:30 at night. He goes, Doug, you got a brain tumor. And I said, ooh. He said, so we had to schedule an MRI. And we went through this process that was supposed to determine whether it was malignant or benign, and all the tests came back inconclusive. So I knew that I was going to have surgery to get the tumor removed. And so what I decided to do during that time was, I felt like, well, I always see people who are my age and they have something like this happen, and they're here, and then something happens and they never get back up here, right? They're here, or maybe they go up, but they don't get back to where they were. And so I just decided I was going to train for my surgery like I was training for a marathon. That I was just going to, I was staying in pretty good shape, but I was like, I'm just going to start training like I'm going to be in marathon shape when I lay on the operating table. So I spent the whole fall running, biking, training, running with my running groups and everything like that. And I had to go, I ended my semester, so I did my finals, finished them before the Thanksgiving break in 2023, or 2019. And did Thanksgiving break, and then on the Monday after Thanksgiving, I was in the hospital, and they did the operation. It was like a 7-hour operation or something like that. And it turned out it was malignant. And so they couldn't take it all out because it was growing on a blood vessel, one of the main arteries. And if they didn't want to get too close to it, because if they nicked that, then I was done, right? So so they patched me up and everything like that. And then starting in January, it was like the last day of January, I think, I started chemotherapy in 2020. And then you might remember something else happened in 2020. Pandemic, right? So I think my second chemo infusion or something like that was when all the hospitals shut down and everything. So it was a really, really super weird time, right? But I managed to really keep my fitness up as long as I was allowed to do it. The chemo messed me up because I would come out of chemo on Friday. I'd go Monday to Friday, and I would fall asleep in the car on the way home. And then I'd sleep all day Friday and all day Saturday, maybe wake up on Sunday or something like that. And but when I got done, I would start walking, and I couldn't. They didn't want me running because my head was all messed up and everything like that. So I went through this process, and then when I finally, I took a leave of absence from Xavier, and I came back to teach in the fall of 20, but it was a disaster because I couldn't remember my password, or the effect of the radiation and the chemo on my brain. They said it would take 10 months or so before I would be able to start, feeling normal and everything like that. But I tell you that story because coming out of it, one of the things I wanted to do was I said, I got to do a race, I got to do something. And I had seen this advertisement email came into my inbox about a ultra marathon relay in West Virginia called the Highball to Thurman Ultra Relay. And I thought, oh, that seems cool. I wonder if I can get, so I asked my son Noah, my oldest son Noah. He said yes, he wanted to do it. My nephew and his niece, and my nephew and his wife, or fiance, I'm sorry, they are really active. She's the ballet dancer that I was telling you about. And we decided that we were going to form a team and enter this race. And so we were all training remotely. We would check in, on Zoom and everything like that with each other, and send messages back and forth. And I was like the planner and everything like that. And my wife and her sister, they found us like a Airbnb in the woods in West Virginia. And so it was super exciting. It was like the end of May 2022. And we showed up. My son ran the first 10 miles. Kelsey ran the next 10 miles. Patrick ran 12, and then I ran the last 18. And it was just the training for it. The whole team aspect of it was just cool. It was difficult. And we had no idea. It was running along a rail bed, so you were going up and down the mountains, but you'd always come back to this rail bed. And then you were finishing in this town called Thurman, which was a ghost town, but it was a train stop, and the buildings were there and everything like that, so they just kind of set up shop in this town for the finish line. And as you were coming in, you had to go up out of the valley, and it was like going up the steepest hill, like you were using your hands to get up. And it was super exhausting at the end of 18 miles. It was probably about 16 when I was going up the hill. Anyway, got up to the path, and I was running, not very fast at this point. I see my wife. She's running towards me. She goes, "How are you doing?" I said, "I'm okay." And so she's running along with me, and then the rest of our team and our friends are there. So we all run, and we cross the finish line. And they said, "And the first place relay team," and we came in first place. So in the relay division, right? So it was, and because it was the first edition of the High Ball to Thurman Ultra Marathon Relay, and we won, we set the course record because there was no course record before that. So that was like, we had so much fun with that. It was a blast. So that was super, super cool. That was really cool. That probably is one of my, the most memorable, best running experiences I ever had. Yeah, it was cool. I don't know if I can recreate that, but I'd love to.
Any final words of wisdom, lessons learned, advice to?
I don't know. Like I would give advice to people, but I think what I would say to my students all the time is you don't have to have it all figured out. People want you to have it all figured out, and you can act like you've got it all figured out, but you don't have to have it all figured out. And it's okay to do things because you think it might be cool to do it, or you might have an interest in it. And you can always change your mind. You can always do something different. So I think that's more my nature. I know a lot of people, that's not their natural inclination to think like that. But it's worked for me. If anybody else can glom onto that and find any value in it, then yeah, have at it.